Today, Joe's war comes home in a way she can't ignore. After Russian operatives reach her front door, suspicion falls on Alexandra, the Ukrainian intelligence officer embedded inside Russia's SVR, and Joe is determined to find out whether she betrayed them. That means a brutal loyalty test, with Alexandra's own family pulled into the pressure. But instead of cracking, she gives Joe a reaction that forces the team to question what the Russians actually know, and how they found Joe in the first place. The fallout doesn't stop at work. Back home, Joe's daughters ask her to quit, forcing her to tell them plainly that she sees herself as a soldier, why she keeps fighting, and why walking away isn't that simple. Then the mission widens. Alexandra is brought in to explain how foreign intelligence builds influence inside America, through money, blackmail, honeypots, and carefully cultivated assets. And when her own asset list reaches into sensitive U.S. institutions and elected office, the problem becomes much bigger than one compromised operation. Now Joe wants to turn that uncertainty into a weapon, using a dangerous counterintelligence gamble to flush hidden players into the open. To understand how suspicion grows into a move this risky, we need to go back to the beginning. The episode opens with Joe's team moving against Alexandra, the Ukrainian intelligence officer whose information helped them extract Alexei Yurimov from Ukraine. Instead of starting with Alexandra herself, the team seizes her mother and younger sister and puts them on camera. Kyle then sits Alexandra down and makes the threat brutally clear. He says torturing her would be pointless because she has been trained to resist, so the pressure will fall on her family instead. The reason for the interrogation is what happened after the Ukraine operation. Two armed Russian contract agents appeared at the front door of the senior case officer overseeing the mission. They had restraints, and the timing makes Alexandra the obvious suspect. Kyle demands to know how the Russians identified Joe, but Alexandra insists she does not know. When the team threatens to take a finger from her sister, she tries to explain that Russian surveillance could have picked Joe up through a drone or satellite, but Kyle points out that if Russia had that kind of visibility, they should have identified the entire team. The pressure becomes even more personal when Alexandra is accused of being a Russian double agent. She explodes. Her father died fighting Russia, her brothers are still fighting, and she describes Russia as the enemy that destroyed and terrorized her country. Kyle keeps provoking her until she lunges at him in genuine rage. Afterward, he concludes that they have hit a real nerve. Alexandra is told that the whole exercise was designed to prove whether she is who she claims to be, and that her reaction was the proof they needed. She then offers her own explanation for the men at Joe's house. Russia did not necessarily know Joe's identity, they may only have suspected her. In Alexandra's view, the SVR sacrificed two contract agents simply to see how Joe would react. By killing them at her door, Joe may have confirmed the suspicion herself. Alexandra makes one thing very clear. If Russia had actually intended to take Joe, Joe would already be gone. If you're enjoying the recap, hit like and subscribe, and let's keep going. Back at home, the consequences are already changing Joe's family life. Security now surrounds the house, and even sending the girls to school requires an armed escort. Joe and Neil are tense with each other, and the girls finally call a family meeting. They ask Joe to quit because they believe that if she leaves the job, no one will have a reason to hurt her. Joe tells them it does not work that way. Evil does not stop when people surrender to it. She explains that Neil's passion is saving lives, while hers is protecting a way of life. She has lost people, nearly lost her own life, and has taken lives as well. For the first time, she stops softening the truth for her daughters and tells them exactly how she sees herself. She is a soldier, and a soldier keeps fighting until the fight is over or the soldier can no longer continue. She says their freedom is worth that sacrifice. After the conversation, Neil struggles with the new reality surrounding the family. Joe apologizes that the operation followed her home, but when he asks what all of this means for her, her answer is simple. It means finding the rest of them. At the office, Joe and the team review Alexandra's interrogation. Kyle believes her behavior does not fit someone who knowingly betrayed the operation. He argues that Russia may have learned about the extraction only after the target was already gone, then sent teams to shake every possible tree. He also points out that when Alexandra's family was threatened, she did not bargain or trade information. Her strongest reaction came only when she was accused of working for Russia. Joe is less willing to close the question. Alexandra has survived deep cover inside the SVR since 2018, so Joe knows she is capable of holding a story under pressure. Meanwhile, Joe's daughters discover what life with a protective detail actually feels like. On the drive to school, a vehicle ahead creates a possible threat. The security team reacts instantly, pushing through traffic and moving the girls out of danger. Nothing is confirmed, but the girls are visibly shaken. What used to be an ordinary school run now feels like a military movement. Joe later goes with the team to a discreet location in Baltimore where Alexandra has been moved. Even getting upstairs becomes a small counter-surveillance exercise when an overly curious stranger starts asking questions. Inside, Joe confronts Alexandra directly. She tells her that Russian people came to her home and endangered her family. Alexandra again denies giving them anything and argues that if the SVR truly knew Joe had taken Alexei, they would also know the mission, and Joe never would have made it home. Then Alexandra offers a way to test the theory. Her brother normally contacts her with a specific message when the SVR wants to call her in, but that message has not arrived. To her, that means Russia still believes Ukraine has Alexei and does not know exactly what happened. Her proposal is to let Russia know the Americans have him. Once that happens, she says, the hidden network will start moving, and she can show Joe who the Hornets are. Joe agrees to begin immediately. Elsewhere, Caitlin and her husband discuss how foreign intelligence services operate inside the United States. Their conversation makes the larger danger clear. Recruitment does not always look like a spy movie. It can come through shell companies, lawsuits, financial pressure, compromised relationships, or carefully placed personal contacts. Russia and China may use different methods and pursue different long-term goals, but both can exploit Americans without the targets fully understanding who is behind them. That idea becomes the foundation of the next briefing. Alexandra is brought in front of Joe's team and identified for everyone, a Ukrainian intelligence officer who has been embedded inside Russia's SVR since 2018. Her intelligence made the Alexei extraction possible. Joe warns the team not to trust her automatically. In this world, everyone lies to achieve an objective. Alexandra then explains how Russia views the strategic fight. She compares Russia to a wolf pack, China to a tiger, and the United States to a bear too large to defeat directly. So instead of trying to overpower the bear, foreign adversaries weaken it from within. She says the packet in front of the team contains Americans who have already been touched by that system. She walks them through the mechanics. A local official can be compromised through sex, money, or blackmail. Low-level influence can begin with disruption and disinformation, then move into direct foreign influence and eventually real espionage. Honeypots are only one tool. Once leverage is gained on a useful person, that person becomes an asset, with a case officer or higher-level handler maintaining the relationship. The briefing becomes far more serious when Joe asks about Alexandra's own asset list. Kyle has seen it, and he reluctantly confirms that it reaches into sensitive American institutions. The discussion explicitly reaches the NSA, JSOC, and a senator, while Kyle's reactions indicate 5 high-level names are involved in the sensitive part of the list. That is why exposing Alexandra is so dangerous. If the government publicly identifies her, every person tied to her could panic, and the political consequences could be enormous. Joe sees that panic as an opportunity. Instead of quietly protecting the network, she wants to force it to move. Senior leadership later reviews Alexandra's dossier and notes something important. Analysts have not found the asset's actions materially benefiting Russia, while the people under discussion have publicly supported Ukraine. That supports the idea that Alexandra's true allegiance is still Ukrainian, even though she has been operating inside the Russian system. Joe proposes a counterintelligence gamble. The White House should announce that the United States has captured a Russian SVR agent who made contact with numerous American officials and used bribery or extortion, but release no name, photograph, or detailed evidence. The statement would make Russia and every compromised contact imagine that the Americans know far more than they actually do. Then the government can watch who starts calling, running, destroying evidence, or contacting Alexandra. Joe also wants Alexandra released and followed closely. Every SVR contact who reaches for her could expose another part of the network. One official compares the idea to hunting mice by setting the barn on fire. Jo accepts the risk because she still does not believe the men at her house found her by accident. Someone knew who she was, where she was, and when she would be there. If Alexandra did not give them that information, Jo intends to use her to find whoever did. Leadership says they will sleep on the proposal, but Jo immediately understands that the decision is effectively made. Soon afterward, the White House press secretary publicly announces that FBI counterintelligence has apprehended an SVR agent and that investigators have evidence involving bribery and extortion of government officials and people in the private sector. No identity is released, exactly as Jo proposed. The trap is now active, and then the episode ends with a completely unexplained visual. Away from the press conference, Jo is shown lying on a table in a dark room. Her wrist is secured, and restraints hold her head and body in place as she lies there with her eyes open. There is no dialogue, no explanation of where she is, and no confirmation of how she got there. After spending the entire episode trying to flush hidden enemies into the open, the final image leaves Jo herself in an unknown and deeply vulnerable position.